Trump and his puppets here in Congress put out a constant stream of lies about immigration. So let me summarize what is really going on here. Trump has ordered law enforcement agencies to focus not on violent criminals, but on indiscriminately rounding up as many people as possible. Trump is targeting people going to work at Home Depot and 7-Eleven, ignoring gangs. Trump is targeting people trying to follow the rules and go to a court hearing, ignoring those who commit real violence. And then there's the kids. Imagine just for a moment that they're your kids. Law enforcement raids at our schools. Kids with their hands zip-tied behind their backs. Multiple U.S. citizen children with cancer deported to foreign countries, separated from their treatment, their care, and their doctors. This is not just about immigrant families. Donald Trump is undermining the rights that protect all of us, no matter who we are and where we come from. People are being arrested without ever having been accused of a crime, held for days without contact with their families or their lawyers, people being deported in violation of judicial orders. Trump also is going after anyone who dares try to put up guardrails against this, arresting judges, arresting mayors, arresting members of Congress and union leaders. This is not law. This is not order. This is chaos, and it's dangerous for all of us.
Donald Trump's birthday wasn't just ruined by the humiliatingly small crowd that barely showed up for his parade in Washington, but the millions of people who actually did show up everywhere else in the country, because it is now being reported that No Kings was the biggest single day of protest in American history. And if that wasn't enough to set Donald Trump off, the man who loves mocking his tiny crowds more than anyone else, President Obama just dropped the hammer on Donald Trump's failed agenda, and he is losing it in a Truth Social post, and so is Carolyn Levitt. We're going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you, leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work now. Before we can get into President Obama most recently said, I want to start with a clip from just a few weeks ago that I think provides such important context to the media's failure to cover this current moment.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I'd said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings. We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies. It's unimaginable that the same parties that are silent now would have tolerated behavior like that from me, or a whole bunch of my predecessors. So, and I say this not on a partisan basis. This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country, and what values do we stand for?
Now, I wanted to start with that clip from President Obama, because all the reporting I have seen outside of independent media, because independent media has covered that parade correctly, has been a joke. Politico and the Washington Post covered the parade as if it went off without a hitch, if it was completely packed with people, that it was this huge show of force and a victory for Donald Trump. But of course, we know that's not true. The images on the ground told us everything we need to know. The media fails by reporting kind of what's happening without the context of why. And that is what is lacking in coverage of Donald Trump right now, and why it is so important we continue to speak out, and so important. President Obama just did, as we see right here. Obama breaks cover with message about immigrants as Trump demands more ICE raids. Former President Barack Obama urged Americans to reject the framing of immigrants as enemies as Donald Trump demanded supercharged ICE raids in an unhinged Truth Social rant. Over the past week, protests have surged across the U.S. in response to aggressive operations by immigration and customs enforcement officers. The backlash began in Los Angeles, where federal workplace raids ignited public fury. It was a tale of two social media posts on Sunday as Obama calmly appealed for dignity and respect to prevail before Trump spewed out a trademark rant over on Truth Social. Just hours later, the former president, who served 2 consecutive terms, referenced his deferred action for childhood arrivals policy, which allowed immigrants who came to the U.S. as children to request official documentation. 13 years ago, my administration acted to protect young people who were in America every single way, but one on paper. DACA was an example of how we can be a nation of immigrants in a nation of laws, and it's example worth remembering today. When families with similar backgrounds who just want to live, work, and support their communities are being demonized and treated as enemies. He continued, we can fix our broken immigration system while still recognizing our common humanity and treating each other with dignity and respect. In fact, it's the only way we ever will. The script was flipped, though, on Trump's very own social media website, where the president encouraged ICE agents to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history. We see some of that insane post here with Trump writing, "Our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission. The largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE are subjected to violence, harassment, and even threats from radical Democrat politicians, but nothing will stop us from executing our mission and fulfilling our mandate to the American people. ICE officers are herewith ordered to, by notice of this truth, to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history," the White House's response. Carolyn Leavitt stopped just short of telling Obama to keep his nose out of it in a comment to the Daily Beast. If the American people cared what Obama thought, they would have followed his advice and elected open borders radical VP Harris, spokesperson Abigail Jackson said in an emailed statement. But it's Donald Trump that's in the White House GHE, and he is fulfilling his promise to the American people by securing our borders and deporting illegal aliens. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, people probably do miss President Obama, who was a real president and a real leader. And they do side with him in an issue that Donald Trump is losing by huge majorities. His deportation plan, people don't actually like his attacks on LA, his enforcement of immigration, ripping families apart, stealing people off the street. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say people don't actually like that. So whatever spin on the ball that the press office wants to put out, it's not really going to work. Especially as we continue to see these images, I have never seen more people just on my social media feed be speaking out against one single issue than those in LA have against these raids that ICE is conducting. It is so powerful, and it is really moving the needle if you have been a subscriber to this channel for a long time. You know that we have been consistently saying before Trump was even inaugurated, before this plan had even started, that it was our job not to go along with it, but to make the case against it. Because sure, in that current moment, it might have been a little bit popular, but it's not now. Why? Because we've made the case against how immoral and illegal it is, and we should have been doing that as Democrats from the beginning. I was very disappointed, and all who voted for the Lake Riley Act, which has allowed ICE to conduct these raids. In such an egregious way, we need to be standing up first and foremost for what we know is right before we guess what's politically expedient. Because sometimes I feel like we guess incorrectly, but someone who hasn't been guessing, someone who's been sticking to their principles is Congressman Greg Casar. And he let that be known in this takedown of ICE right here.
Good afternoon, governors. Republicans have dragged you in today for questioning because they say your immigration policies are dangerous for American citizens. So I want to ask each of you some questions about recent events affecting U.S. citizens. Governor Pritzker, was it your administration or was it the Trump administration that arrested a 10-year-old U.S. citizen recovering from brain cancer and sent her to Mexico?
It was the Trump administration, sir.
Correct. That was the Trump administration. Governor Walz, was it your administration or was it the Trump administration that jailed an American for days, alleging he was in the country illegally, despite him being a U.S. citizen?
I believe that was the Trump administration.
That's correct. That was the Trump administration. Governor Hochul, was it your administration or was it the Trump administration that arrested a totally innocent U.S. citizen, pregnant woman who wound up in the hospital after her detention?
Those horrific situations are all the results of the Trump administration's over-enforcement of our laws.
That was just this week, and that's correct. That was the Trump administration. Let me be clear. Democratic governors who are trying to protect the rights of all of us are not the real danger that we face. Donald Trump's reckless immigration policies are what is putting us at risk. U.S. citizens around the country right now, people are peacefully protesting to show the world the awful things the Trump administration is doing. Tearing families and communities apart, ignoring the rule of law, making us all less safe. And please know, if you're one of those peaceful demonstrators, I hear you. I see you. I have your back. So many of you are suffering because someone you love is terrified or has been unjustly taken away from you by this administration. But Donald Trump does not want people to hear your message. That's why he's taken National Guard troops and the Marines away from their jobs and has sent them to Los Angeles, breaking all the rules about how protests like this are handled. Trump and Governor Abbott have even sent troops to my district in downtown San Antonio, a place that has been perfectly orderly and peaceful. Because, as always, we know Donald Trump is trying to stoke up chaos and division, and he doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. He wants to start a fire, pour gasoline on it, and blame somebody else for the flames. So if you're watching at home and you see images of disorder or chaos in the coming days, remember this: it's Donald Trump's fire. It's him who lit the fire, and he does not care if the rest of us get burned.
This is the type of principled leadership that we absolutely need in this moment. We're going to be covering it on this show, so thank you for your support. And until next time, I'll see you soon.